Ready to decode the world of contraception. We're diving deep into a topic that's about as personal as it gets. You asked for it, so get ready for the no-nonsense breakdown of contraception, all the nitty-gritty details, way beyond the birds and the bees.
It's a great request because, let's face it, figuring out how to manage your reproductive health can be, well, overwhelming to say the least. We're here to give you the knowledge to confidently make those choices.
Absolutely. And it's about more than just knowing your options. It's about really understanding them. So how about we start with something I'm guessing most people have heard of? The pill.
Yeah, the pill. It's a classic for a reason. Basically, birth control pills have these synthetic hormones that stop pregnancy.
Okay, sure. But how do they actually do that?
Think of these hormones like they're, master puppeteers or something, They're making these tiny adjustments to your hormones to stop ovulation, no egg released, no chance of getting pregnant.
Gotcha. No egg, no problem.
Yeah.
But what if you're like me and you can't remember to take a pill every single day? What are your options then?
Well, if you're looking for that set it and forget it method, there's the Depo-Provera shot. It's one shot every 3 months.
Out of sight, out of mind. I like it. What else is out there?
There's also the patch. It's really discreet. You just wear it on your skin and it releases hormones. And then, of course, we can't forget about the vaginal ring. It's a small, flexible ring that you put in yourself. And like the patch, it releases hormones on a regular schedule.
Wow, so many choices with hormonal birth control. Sounds like there really is something for everyone. But let's be real, we have to talk about side effects. I feel like that's something a lot of people are worried about.
Yeah, you're right. Side effects are definitely a concern. But, everyone reacts differently to hormones. Some people have no problems at all, while others might have some, bumps along the way, maybe mood swings or their period changes.
Definitely something to talk to your doctor about. But, and I have to ask this, isn't it kind of ironic that something that prevents pregnancy could actually help with period problems?
It's true. It's like this hidden superpower or something. It can make your periods lighter. You might have fewer cramps. And some women even find relief from PMDD. That's premenstrual dysphoric disorder, by the way. That alone can be life-changing.
Oh, that's a win-win.
Yeah.
Speaking of wins, I've heard about this other type of contraception, LIRCs. What are those all about?
LARCs, or long-acting reversible contraception, are kind of the VIPs in the world of contraception. Once they're in place, they're super effective, and you really don't have to think about it. We're talking about the implant, that's Nexplanon, and the IUD.
Okay, tell me more about this implant. Nexplanon. Was it?
That's the one. It's really small and flexible, about the size of a matchstick, and it gets inserted under the skin on your upper arm.
Hold up. In your arm. That's kind of wild.
I know, right? It sounds way more intense than it actually is. And here's the best part. Once it's in, you're good to go for 3 years.
3 years. Okay, I'm sold. But how does that even work? How does it do its thing from all the way up there in your arm?
It's like you've got this tiny little superhero, powered by science, just hanging out in your arm and stopping those sperm in their tracks. It releases just a small amount of hormones to prevent pregnancy.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've covered the arm implant. Now, what about IUDs? What makes them special?
IUDs are like the superheroes that set up shop right in the uterus and prevent pregnancy long term.
Okay, before you keep going, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Inside the uterus sounds a little, intense. Is it painful?
I won't lie, getting an IUD put in is a procedure, but it's done by a doctor, and a lot of people say it's not bad at all. And the best part is that once it's in, you can pretty much forget about it for years. Mm-hmm. Depending on what kind of IUD you get, we're talking 3 to 10 years of being protected.
Whoa. That's incredible. So, okay, we've talked about long-acting hormonal options, but what about if you don't want to use hormones at all?
That's where those barrier methods come in. They literally create a barrier that blocks the sperm from getting to the egg.
The classics, like condoms?
Exactly. Condoms are definitely the MVPs of the barrier method world, and for good reason. They're the only method that protects you from STIs.
Which is so important to remember. Protection on all fronts, everyone.
Yes. And yes, so male condoms are definitely the most common, but don't forget about female condoms. You can actually put them in up to 8 hours before having sex.
Now, that's what I call planning ahead. Are there any other barrier methods? What if condoms aren't your thing?
There are a few other options like diaphragms and cervical caps. Those get inserted into the vagina to cover the cervix. Those take a bit more, finesse, and you have to use them with spermicide, which is basically a chemical that stops those swimmers.
Sounds like those take a bit more work. What about just using spermicide by itself?
You can definitely find spermicide as creams, films, and gels, but it's not the most reliable if you're only using that. It's more like a background singer, not the lead vocalist, if you know what I mean.
Right, they can add a little something to the mix, but they shouldn't be the main event. So we've covered barrier methods and hormonal options, both short-term and long-acting. But what about methods that work with your body's natural cycle? You're talking about fertility, awareness-based methods, right?
Yeah.
Where you work with your body instead of, against it.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about becoming a detective of your own cycle, basically. You track your period and all the bodily signs to figure out when you're fertile, the few days each month where you can actually get pregnant.
Okay, hold on. Before we even get into the how, can we define fertile window?
Oh, for sure. It's one of those terms everyone uses, but what it really means is those days leading up to ovulation, including ovulation, when an egg gets released. And here's the thing, sperm can live inside for a few days, so those days before ovulation are really important.
Whoa, I never knew that sperm were so tough. So with fertility awareness, you're basically figuring out your fertile window and then what? Just not having sex?
Yep, pretty much. You have to abstain, or you can use a barrier method during those days.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you actually figure out your fertile window? Is it just all calendars and guessing?
Luckily, no. There are a few ways to do it, each with their own methods for tracking. Like, there's the temperature method. You take your basal body temperature. That's your temperature when you're totally at rest, first thing in the morning, before you even get out of bed.
Sounds intense.
It is pretty precise. Even a tiny temperature change can tell you that you're ovulating. And then there's the cervical mucus method. With that one, you're tracking the changes in your mucus, down there. I know it sounds a little personal, but it can actually be really accurate.
So, okay, it takes some work, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are the pros and cons of these more natural methods?
Well, a lot of people like that they're hormone-free, they don't cost anything, and they usually fit in with certain religious beliefs. But on the other hand, they take a lot of commitment and self-discipline. You really have to know your body. And let's be honest, life happens. Stress, getting sick, even just staying up late can mess with your cycle. And that can make those methods a lot less effective.
So maybe not the best for those spontaneous romantic evenings.
Probably not, unless you've got a backup plan.
Which brings us to the better safe than sorry category. Emergency contraception. Let's talk about those oops moments. What are our options there?
Emergency contraception, sometimes people call it the morning after pill, is like that safety net for when you have unprotected sex or your birth control fails. But it's super important to remember that this isn't regular birth control.
Got it. It's like a fire extinguisher, not a smoke alarm. So what kinds of emergency contraception are out there?
There are two main types, hormonal and non-hormonal. Plan B is a hormonal option. It basically stops or delays you from ovulating. It's kind of like putting up a closed for business sign for any sperm that happen to be around.
Ah, I like that. What about the non-hormonal option?
That would be Ella. It has a medication in it that blocks the hormones that an egg needs to implant. And just so you know, Ella needs a prescription, unlike Plan B, which you can get over the counter.
Good to know. So whether it's preventing ovulation or implantation, you have to act fast, right? How soon after having unprotected sex do you have to take it?
Timing is everything. You really should take it within 72 hours. And sooner is always better. Sometimes can work for up to 5 days after, but, why risk it?
Definitely not a wait and see type of situation. So I know there are a lot of misconceptions about emergency contraception. If you could tell everyone just one thing about how it works, what would it be?
It's so important to understand that emergency contraception won't end a pregnancy that's already happened. If the egg is already implanted and you're pregnant, it won't do anything. It's about prevention, not termination.
Really important to clear that up. Okay, so, wow, we've talked about a ton here. Everything from the everyday stuff to the just-in-case stuff. But what about for people who know they're done having kids or maybe never want kids at all? That's a whole other thing, right?
It is. If you're looking for something permanent, there's sterilization.
You mean like a vasectomy for men and tubal ligation for women?
Those are the ones. These are one-and-done procedures, and they're super effective at preventing pregnancy.
I bet a lot of people love the sound of one and done. But it seems like there's probably a lot to think about before you go that route.
Oh, absolutely. It's a major decision, and it's really important to really talk to your doctor about it. You want to make sure you understand the risks and benefits, what to expect, all of that. But the biggest thing to consider is that it's pretty much permanent. They do have procedures to reverse it, but those are complicated and they don't always work.
So, yeah, not something to take lightly.
Yeah.
What about the procedures themselves? How do they work?
For guys, A vasectomy is usually pretty straightforward. They often do it with just local anesthesia. They block the vas deferens, that's the tube that carries the sperm.
So there's no more sperm. Seems pretty simple.
Yep, that's the idea. Tubal ligation for women is more involved. That one needs general anesthesia, and what they do is they cut and seal the fallopian tubes so the egg and sperm can't meet.
Wow, definitely some big differences there.
Mm.
So whether it's a vasectomy or tubal ligation, the main thing is that these are big decisions you really have to think about.
For sure. It all comes back to making good choices that work for you and your life and what you want for your family.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, we have covered so much in our contraception deep dive today. Like, we've talked about hormones and surgical procedures and everything in between. It seems like there's no right answer for everyone, huh?
You got it. It's like that choose your own adventure thing, but for birth control.
I love that. So, how do our listeners navigate this adventure and choose the path that's right for them?
I'd say it starts with being open and honest with yourself and with your doctor, too. What are your priorities? How much effort are you willing to put in? Are there any health problems you need to consider? It's all about finding the method that fits into your life, not one that takes over your whole life, you know?
Right. And don't forget, what you need might change over time. It's okay to have those conversations again later on and look at other options. Knowing what's out there is so important.
Totally agree. You might decide later that you need something different, and that's okay.
So true. Okay, before we wrap up, I have one more question. Earlier, you were talking about how some IUDs can stop your periods. Where does the blood go then? Does it just, disappear?
Oh, yeah, we get that question all the time. And I get it. It seems kind of impossible, right? But here's how it works. Those hormonal IUDs make the lining of your uterus thinner. So there's not as much to shed each month. It's not that the blood goes somewhere else. It's more that there just isn't as much to begin with.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. See, always learning something new every day. So it's like the IUD hits pause on your lining's monthly makeover.
That's
Yeah.
a good way to put it. Those hormones, they really do work some magic, you know?
Science is pretty amazing these days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of options, but before we wrap things up,
Mhm.
what's your biggest piece of advice for our listeners as they, go on their own contraception journey?
I'd say more than anything, go into it with curiosity and feeling empowered. This is about you taking control of your reproductive health and making the choices that are right for you, for your own values and what you want in life.
It's your body, your life, your choice.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask all the questions, advocate for yourself, and explore all the different options until you find the one that you're like, yes, that's it.
And remember, it's totally okay if you change your mind later on. Life's all about evolving, right? Your contraception can, too.
100%. It's a conversation you can keep having throughout your whole life as things change.
So true. Well, I feel like we've given our listener everything they need to feel good about their choices when it comes to contraception.
I hope so. We really went deep today into reproductive health, for sure.
We talked about the science, we busted some myths, and hopefully got people thinking and talking about all of this.
And most importantly, we helped our listener feel empowered to make their own choices about their reproductive health.
Yes. Here's to making informed choices. Thanks for joining us for this contraception deep dive. Until next time.